finding that the cloth does indeed date back to the time of Christ, and with artificial intelligence having something to say about the shroud as well.
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has remained one of history's greatest mysteries, a relic that has fascinated believers, baffled scientists, and fueled passionate debates. This ancient linen has sparked endless questions, drawing curiosity and controversy through the ages. But now, something extraordinary has happened. After decades of investigation, countless theories, and heated discussions, no one could have imagined what would happen when artificial intelligence finally took a closer look at the shroud. What it uncovered has left people around the world absolutely speechless. The Shroud of Turin, cherished by the faithful and questioned by experts, was analyzed using cutting-edge AI technology. The outcome? Truly mind-blowing. In a twist no one saw coming, this sacred cloth seems to have revealed one of its most closely guarded secrets. Thanks to AI, the shroud has been decoded in a way that challenges everything we thought we knew about history, faith, and authenticity. Forget everything you've heard about medieval forgeries or clever religious hoaxes. This isn't just another theory. What artificial intelligence has uncovered could forever change how we see one of the world's most mysterious relics. The image produced by the AI is shaking the very foundations of what experts thought they knew, reigniting debates about everything from the science behind how the image formed to the possibility of resurrection itself. So what exactly did the AI find? In a world full of relics, counterfeits, and forgotten treasures, one simple cloth has continued to defy both time and explanation: the Shroud of Turin. It's not gold, it's not covered in jewels, it's not even in pristine condition. It's just a 14-foot strip of linen marked with the faint image of a man, naked, wounded, and apparently crucified. And yet, for more than 600 years, this unassuming piece of fabric has fascinated scientists, challenged skeptics, and inspired millions who believe it might be the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ. The shroud first entered recorded history in the 14th century, in the quiet town of Lyre, France. It didn't arrive with royal processions, ancient scrolls, or miraculous signs. It appeared quietly, wrapped in mystery. A local knight claimed it was the authentic burial cloth of Christ, but the church remained cautious, never officially declaring it genuine. Still, the mystery refused to fade. And now, with the arrival of artificial intelligence, the story may have entered an entirely new chapter. Back when it first emerged, many doubted its authenticity. But in 1898, everything changed. That year, an amateur photographer named Secondo Pia took the first ever photograph of the shroud. When he developed the negative, the world was stunned, because the faint marks barely visible to the naked eye suddenly transformed into a vivid, haunting image. A face, a body, wounds, every detail strikingly clear. That single photograph sparked a modern fascination that has endured for more than a century, and today, with AI's breakthrough, the mystery has deepened like never before. What truly set this cloth apart wasn't just the image. It was the strange way the image behaved. Oddly enough, the photographic negative appeared far more detailed and lifelike than the cloth itself. There were no brush strokes, no signs of paint, no traces of ink. Some scientists proposed a startling idea. Perhaps the image was formed by a sudden burst of radiation, something powerful enough to capture not only the outline of a man's body, but even the faint depth of his facial bones. As more theories emerged, the debates grew even fiercer. Scholars, scientists, and religious leaders all joined the discussion, but no single explanation satisfied everyone. Critics argued that the cloth sample used for carbon dating might have been taken from a repaired section rather than the original weave. Others claimed that the cleaning process before testing could have skewed the results. To this day, that carbon dating test remains one of the most hotly contested topics in shroud research. Despite years of scientific examination, the mystery endures. No paint, pigment, or dye has ever been conclusively identified that could account for the image, and no known technique, ancient or modern, has been able to reproduce it exactly as it appears. Even more baffling, the image has unique three-dimensional qualities that continue to defy explanation. The depth of shading on the shroud's image actually matches the distance between the cloth and the body it supposedly covered. But how could that even be possible? Some researchers call it a miracle. Others dismiss it as an ingenious medieval trick. And some believe we simply don't yet have the technology to fully understand it. One thing, however, is certain. This image should not exist, at least not by any known method. But now, the right tools may finally be here. And this time, it's not about microscopes or carbon samples. It's about something far more advanced, something that doesn't blink, doesn't tire, and can detect patterns invisible to the human eye. And it's already begun its work. This brings us back to one of the most heated debates in Shroud history: science versus faith. Back in 1988, the world thought the mystery had been solved. 3 respected laboratories, Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, conducted carbon dating on fibers taken from the shroud. Their results dated the cloth between 1260 and 1390 AD. For many scientists, that was game over. They declared the shroud a medieval forgery, likely created to attract pilgrims or influence religious devotion. Newspapers everywhere ran headlines claiming the case was closed. But almost immediately, doubts began to surface. The tested fibers came from the lower left-hand corner of the cloth, an area some researchers believe was damaged and later rewoven in the Middle Ages. Textile expert Raymond Rogers argued that this section may not have been part of the original linen at all. He identified differences in chemical composition, suggesting the tested piece was contaminated by centuries of repairs. If that's true, the carbon dating results would reflect the age of the repair work, not the true age of the shroud. Adding to the problem, the laboratories never tested multiple areas of the cloth. They focused entirely on that one corner. Looking back, many now see this as a serious flaw, but at the time, access to the shroud was extremely limited, and the church only approved a very small sample for testing. That testing limitation from 1988 still hangs over every debate about the shroud. In the years since, a wave of follow-up studies has tried to challenge or expand on those original results. One of the most fascinating came from a team of Italian scientists who used a technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering, WAXS for short. This method examines the microscopic structure of cellulose in ancient fabrics to estimate their age. Their results suggested that the shroud's fibers could be nearly 2,000 years old, placing it much closer to the time of Jesus. Skeptics were quick to respond. They pointed out that wax can be influenced by environmental factors like temperature and humidity, which could make its results less precise than carbon dating. Still, others argued that even if it's not perfect, it provides another data point, one that challenges the official medieval timeline. Then came the pollen research. Botanists found grains of pollen on the shroud from plants native to the Middle East, including species that grow around Jerusalem. Critics countered that contamination over centuries, through handling, travel, and environmental exposure, could explain it. But combined with the cloth's weave pattern, a herringbone twill rare in medieval Europe yet known in ancient Middle Eastern burial shrouds, the argument for an earlier origin didn't disappear entirely. And this is where things get tricky. Science thrives on repeatable results, but the shroud seems to break the rules. The deeper researchers dig, the more anomalies they uncover. No one has explained its three-dimensional image properties. No one has managed to reproduce the facial details using any known medieval art technique. There are no brush strokes, no pigments layered into the fibers, just a faint discoloration affecting only the outermost threads. Something more like a scorch than a stain. For people of faith, that mystery fuels belief. For scientists, it's both intriguing and frustrating. Could the shroud be genuine, with flawed testing hiding its true age? Or is it an incredible forgery, made with methods still beyond our understanding? There's still no definitive answer, just an ever-widening gap between two ways of seeing the world, one searching for hard data, the other searching for deeper meaning. And that brings us to a new player in this centuries-old investigation, a tool that doesn't rely on tradition, personal belief, or long-standing assumptions. One that isn't here to argue what the shroud is, but instead to ask how the image was formed. Artificial intelligence isn't trying to prove or disprove miracles. It's here to detect patterns, analyze anomalies, and let the data tell its own story. The real question is, what will that story be? For more than 100 years, the mystery of the Shroud of Turin has outpaced every scientific method thrown at it. Traditional tests couldn't explain it. Religious debates couldn't resolve it. Even photography, meant to reveal more, only deepened the puzzle. But now, something completely different has stepped into the arena. Artificial intelligence. AI doesn't believe. It doesn't speculate. It doesn't care about theology, history, or reputations. It sees only data, pure, unfiltered, and unforgiving. So when researchers fed it high-resolution images of the Shroud, they weren't prepared for what came next. It began with a project led by Brazilian digital designer Cicero Maras. Using 3D simulation software, he studied how a cloth like the Shroud would drape over different surfaces. One simulation showed it lying over a real human body. Another placed it over a shallow, low-relief sculpture. The difference was striking. On the human model, the cloth distorted, stretching unnaturally over shoulders, dipping into hollows, and warping the image. That's not what we see on the actual Shroud. But when the same cloth was simulated over a flat, sculpted form, the result was almost an exact match. No distortion, no strange stretching. This raised an unsettling possibility. What if the Shroud was never wrapped around a body at all? The investigation didn't stop there. Next came AI-powered image analysis led by Thomas McAvoy and his team. They fed ultra-high-resolution photos of the Shroud into an AI system trained to detect subtle patterns invisible to the human eye. Using advanced methods like principal component analysis (PCA), the software broke the image down into layers of raw data. What emerged wasn't just the familiar face of a man, it was structure, symmetry, mathematical precision. One of the first things the AI revealed was that the intensity of the image, how light or dark each point appeared, carried nearly all the meaningful information. Not color, not texture, not shading, just pure intensity. The image on the Shroud had a depth that acted like a 3D relief. It responded to mathematical models as though it had been encoded, not painted. Even stranger, the discoloration only affected the very top fibers of the linen, just a few microns deep. That level of precision is so extreme that even modern lasers struggle to achieve it without burning through the cloth. And yet, here it was, on a fabric more than 6 centuries old, and possibly much older. Some researchers looked at this and immediately thought of radiation, an intense burst of energy from an unknown source, somehow imprinted onto the fibers. Others revisited older theories about primitive photography, suggesting that perhaps ancient people had used basic light-sensitive chemicals. But no known technique, whether from antiquity or the Renaissance, could produce an image with these exact characteristics. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the AI didn't just confirm strange properties. It began spotting details that human researchers had either overlooked or dismissed. For example, it detected a faint but deliberate symmetry across the chest area, a subtle structured pattern near the jawline, and even unusual overlaps where bloodstains seemed to rest on top of the image in ways that defied normal transfer mechanics. At this point, even skeptics started paying attention. The AI wasn't proving that the Shroud was divine, but it was revealing a level of order and precision that didn't match any known artistic method. There were no brush strokes, no transfer smudges, no ink bleeding into fibers, just a remarkably clean, exact image made up purely of data points. What does that mean? That depends on who you ask. Some believe it's further evidence of a forgery. Only now they suggest it was made using advanced techniques that humanity has since forgotten. Others think it might point to something far stranger, something still beyond our understanding. But one thing is certain: when stripped of bias, history, and belief, the image still doesn't behave like ordinary artwork. It behaves like something created outside the normal boundaries of human experience. And the more the AI studied it, the more it found patterns that, by all logic, shouldn't even be there. The AI's analysis didn't just bring the image into sharper focus, it uncovered a contradiction, and that's when everything began to change. Buried deep within the data was something no one expected to see: a faint but structured, repeating geometry. It was ghost-like, barely visible, yet undeniably consistent. Some dismissed it as a quirk of digital enhancement. Others said it was far too precise to be random. Either way, What the AI had just found in the Shroud of Turin left researchers stunned. This wasn't just about cleaner outlines or improved clarity. The pattern appeared across multiple layers of analysis, whether through ultraviolet fluorescence, thermal imaging, or high-contrast filters. The same symmetrical structure kept emerging, most prominently around the face and chest. It didn't match the look of brushstrokes, fabric folds, or natural blood flow. It looked engineered. At first, the team suspected interference from the scanning process itself, so they ran control tests. They examined unrelated cloth samples. They even randomized parts of the Shroud's image data. Yet the structure remained, unchanged, intact. And it wasn't just random shapes. It seemed to follow precise mathematical ratios, like an invisible scaffolding framing the contours of the face, torso, and even the hands. One researcher, speaking under anonymity, described it as a framework without a builder. The implications were unsettling. If the Shroud's image had formed through direct contact with a body, it should show distortions, just as earlier 3D modeling experiments had predicted. If it were painted, there should be pigment particles, brush marks, or penetration into the fibers. But the image had none of these. And now, hidden beneath it all, was a geometric pattern no one had noticed, until AI pulled it from the noise. Some speculated it might point to a lost technology, perhaps an ancient form of image projection, or a primitive kind of photography. Others whispered about something stranger, a sudden burst of energy, radiation, plasma, or something even harder to explain. That's when a phrase began circulating quietly among the scientists, not in official reports, not in interviews. They all knew the Shroud bore the faint image of a man. They knew it didn't appear to be paint. They saw traces of blood, though not entirely made of blood. They knew the image was, oddly, a photographic negative. But behind closed doors, among those who had studied it longest, they began to call it something else. They called it terrifying. "This is unsettling," one physicist reportedly remarked during a private conference call. Not because it proves anything supernatural, but because it doesn't fit into any known natural category either. It behaves more like a phenomenon than an artifact. In that instant, the enigma of the Shroud deepened. It wasn't just a religious relic anymore, or a medieval curiosity to be debated and dismissed. It had become something else entirely, an object whose image might not have been created by touch, paint, or physical pressure at all, but by some process. And perhaps the most troubling thought of all, that process might not be reproducible, at least not yet. So what does that mean for the Shroud's origin? Is the image merely a digital illusion, a quirk of analysis, or is it the fingerprint of something humanity has yet to even begin to understand? That's what unsettled scientists most, because AI doesn't make leaps of faith. It doesn't believe. It reveals. And what it revealed suggested the possibility of an energy event, something that left behind not only an image, but an imprint of order. For those who believe in the Shroud's divine origin, this finding only strengthens their faith. For skeptics, it's a challenge, an invitation to form new hypotheses. But one fact is undeniable. This discovery opened a door, and now that it's open, it cannot be closed. What the AI uncovered about the Shroud of Turin didn't shock scientists, because it solved the mystery. It shocked them because it gave them something far more powerful, a better question. The news didn't erupt through sensational headlines. Instead, it spread quietly among the scientific community, passed from one key researcher to another in cautious, deliberate whispers. For years, the Shroud had been dismissed in many academic circles as a closed case. But suddenly, the tone had shifted. The long-standing clash between believers and skeptics was evolving into something far more complex, something that might demand both sides to rethink everything they thought they knew. The AI's discovery couldn't be dismissed. It wasn't a glitch. The same precise geometric pattern appeared across different wavelengths and imaging methods, too exact to be accidental. Attempts to replicate or disprove it failed. Soon, experts from physics to cryptography quietly took notice. Panels debated whether the image was a decaying signal or spatial intelligence hidden within the cloth. Theological circles saw it as possible evidence of the resurrection, or at least of a one-time, unrepeatable event. Some scientists, wary of the immense energy needed to create such an imprint without scorching the fabric, grew uneasy. If such a phenomenon occurred once, could it happen again? That question sparked discreet searches for similar anomalies in other relics. So far, without success. But the fact that they're looking shows how much the conversation has shifted. For now, no definitive conclusions have been published, the Vatican remains silent, and raw data is being withheld until results can be verified. The mystery endures. Privately, scientists don't call it a hoax, miracle, or anomaly. They call it a disruption. The Shroud challenges not just faith or history, but how science understands energy, information, and the line between observation and interpretation. Whatever formed its image left a fingerprint that matches no known tool or technique. AI revealed a precise, layered structure, too exact to be accidental, yet impossible to replicate. Some see it as a message, others as a residue from a singular moment beyond our understanding. If it's not man-made, was it an unknown natural event, or something that happened once in all of history? AI doesn't believe or speculate, it just reads patterns. And this pattern feels engineered. The result? A structure without a process, an image without a source, a mystery that grows the more it's studied. Maybe it was never meant to be explained, only witnessed.